Story 1. A good way to insert yourself into a war. Once an American soldier is hurt, we have to get involved. Story 2. Why not? The United States has had 400 troops for peacekeeping and monitoring in the Sinai Peninsula for 46 years, since the 1979 peace accords between Israel and Egypt. Story 3. It seems rational to have someone monitor it, but considering that Trump previously suggested he wanted to use Gaza as real estate, I am not sure I would trust his motives. Story 4. Except it's out of context. These aren't boots. These are regulatory and policy types, still soldiers but not the door-kicking kind. So it's just sensationalist crap. Story 5. Probably the most normal person presidential thing he has done. Search for multinational force and observers. The United States has had troops in the Sinai for decades monitoring a different Israeli-Arab peace agreement. The Egyptians have proven to be trustworthy negotiating partners, whereas Hamas likely never will. Story 6. Not sending troops. The United States Central Command already has personnel there. Story 7. Not a damn thing, because I am tired of posts titled "Your Thoughts on this subreddit" when it is all about United States politics. Story 8. I hate Trump, but this seems totally reasonable as long as there are not any ulterior motives. Story 9. Sounds like United States troops on the ground in the Middle East. We all know how that has always worked out. Story 10. It should be United Nations troops, not troops solely from the United States, who will observe and report rather than being influenced by an unreliable, flip-flopping United States administration. Story 11. Fair enough. It honestly might even be a good idea. Hamas will think twice about any action that might injure or kill a United States soldier and lead to direct United States involvement. Story 12. Can't wait for the oops. An American soldier was shot by Hamas news. Story 13. Look up the Marine deployment to Lebanon and how it turned out. Story 14. That makes total sense. I think Qatar agreed to the strike on Hamas about a month ago, but just in case, peace needs to be enforced. Story 15. Sending 200 United States troops to Israel is meant to help monitor the ceasefire in Gaza and coordinate humanitarian aid. It is a careful move to support peace, but its success depends on cooperation from all sides. Story 16. Cannot wait to see the Trump resort built by the Army Corps of Engineers. Story 17. International troops are necessary. It would be better if it could be a multinational United Nations mission. Story 18. About the same as I think about Qataris building an airbase in Idaho. It's all bullshit. Story 19. They will just stand by and watch Israel devastate Gaza after they have all their hostages back, and Netanyahu somehow finds an excuse to restart the war. Story 20. Good. Hamas wouldn't dare try anything with them around, because if they harm our troops, Trump will greenlight Israel to finish the job and fully take over Gaza City. Story 21. We already do this with other treaties, agreements, and peace deals. Story 22. Just enough to draw the United States back in and to lay a tripwire that will keep this forever war going. Story 23. There are enough people to anger others or put them at risk of death, but not enough to make any meaningful difference. Story 24. 18 billion wasn't enough? Paying for their pensions and healthcare isn't enough? Story 25. What peace agreement? We have not learned from history, have we? Story 26. I am wary. That said, I think that third-party oversight was inevitable at some point. I am sorry it ended up being directed by Trump, of all people. Story 27. In theory, I understand. Do I trust the intentions, or the ability and desire to see it through? Absolutely not. Story 28. I do not want the United States sending troops anywhere. Send them all home to the United States. But I do not see anyone else willing to step up. United Nations peacekeepers are likely off the table because Egypt does not want them there, and Israel would not want any country other than the United States there. Who else is going to monitor Hamas and Israel? The North Atlantic Treaty Organization? They can barely figure out what to do with Ukraine, and it is practically a United States entity anyway. Story 29. My thought is that Trump should go by himself and oversee this. Story 30. That sounds like a solid way to get a couple of soldiers killed so we can send 100,000 more. Story 31. Those 200 troops will certainly be attacked or killed, giving Trump the war he has been desperately wanting so he can implement martial law and suspend the elections. It will also benefit Israel because they will use it as justification to escalate violence in Gaza, level every remaining building, claim the land, and begin development. Story 32. A convenient way to insert ourselves when the deal is violated. Story 33. No new wars. But let us send our troops to Israel and Gaza. That checks out. Story 34. There is no way Israel would allow 200 United States spies within its borders. Story 35. I think it is one of the first signs that this whole thing might come to a close in the near future. It is not the way anyone wanted it to be, but I figure they do not send in troops unless it is nearing the end. Story 36. Since he did not receive the Nobel Peace Prize, his primary motivator for this, I suspect the peace plan is likely to unravel, leaving our troops on the ground in an unnecessarily tense and dangerous situation. There is a 50% chance. Story 37. Potentially the dumbest foreign policy move since President Dwight D. Eisenhower threatened to liquidate Britain's war bonds during the Suez Canal crisis. I do not see how it is in any way in the United States' best interest to position hundreds of American targets in Israel. If one of them is killed, the United States would be directly involved in the war. We are, in effect, inviting the Israelis to stage an attack that kills Americans to draw the United States into the conflict. They would be fools not to do so. But we shall see how this plays out. Maybe it will all go smoothly. Story 38. It depends on the troops. If it is the 82nd Airborne Division, it makes no sense. If it is the 354 Civil Affairs Brigade, it is literally what they are for. Story 39. It's about 200 more than Israel has ever sent to support the United States in any conflict, so I don't feel great about it. It also seems like an opportunistic way to cause American casualties that will draw the United States further into this conflict. Story 40. Terrorist cells are present throughout the area. This is not going to end well, as happened in Iraq, Afghanistan, and other conflicts. Story 41. They are not monitoring shit, he sent them to finish them. They should be going after Bibi, fascist fuckface, and the Israel Defense Forces. Story 42. Maybe take the troops he has sent to Portland and give them something relevant to do in Israel. Story 43. Is this like the United States sending advisors to Vietnam in the 1960s? Story 44. That's just pointless optics. 200 soldiers are not even a drop in the bucket compared with what would be needed to properly monitor it. But it makes him look like he is doing something, which is why he does it. It works because many United States citizens will accept it. Many never leave the country in their lifetime, for various reasons, of course. Story 45. This is how America got itself screwed in Vietnam. It sent advisors, and Richard Nixon became focused on establishing a base of power in Southeast Asia that could better coordinate with Japan on China, sit relatively close to Russia, and facilitate the deployment of troops. Now Donald Trump wants a piece of the real estate action they are trying to create in the Gaza Strip, apparently so he can bankrupt another business at the expense of the children harmed by the violence. Story 46. I disagree with him on this one. Let them deal with it. Story 47. More performative theater. He is wasting time and money sending them overseas, even though they might not get paid, while the Republican shutdown continues and Americans are being harmed. Story 48. I am more concerned about the 50 United States representatives who went to the Israeli meeting 1 or 2 weeks ago. Story 49. No new wars. Huh? I assume that means Make America Great Again supporters will volunteer first to die for Israel, right? Story 50. It would be irresponsible not to. The stated reason I had read was to oversee the creation of a multinational force composed of the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and other countries, tasked with providing security and enforcing the peace agreement. Story 51. I wonder if they are going to stay afterward as a peacekeeping force. Story 52. He could have at least sent the same amount as he did to Los Angeles, Washington, District of Columbia, Portland, and Chicago. Story 53. Illegal appropriation of funds without congressional approval. The authorization for use of military force and declarations of war used to mean something. Story 54. My thought is that riot-starting billionaire pedophile presidents should not be able to do things like this. Story 55. He is desperate to start a war or justify military action at home. Anywhere will do. Story 56. The entire history of over-involving the United States in wars and in alliances with questionable partners, especially under Trump, is a sad tale of diplomatic ineptitude beyond anything seen in modern United States diplomacy since the weapons of mass destruction debacle in Iraq. There is no reason for the United States to permanently assume Israeli guilt for all of Israel's actions because of incidents such as this and the artificial intelligence Gaza video. It does not get better with other wars. Our initial gambit on behalf of Ukraine was to blind Ukraine's defenses, deliberately aiding North Korean and Russian soldiers advancing in Kursk. That should have been an immediate cause for impeachment. Also, Trump and Witkoff quoted Putin to Putin in a manner that appeared homoerotic. Then there were the awful insults to India, claiming credit for that ceasefire. After the red carpet event, Putin carried out additional precision strikes on United States companies in Ukraine, such as Flex, and Trump was visibly unable to address it. European leaders have said publicly that he is compromised by Putin. Claiming to be proud superpatriots, his supporters show no pride in how the country presents itself in foreign policy. They display aggressiveness and threats of annexation toward allies and simpering weakness toward dictators. This is their approach to the most crucial issues. Story 57. My thought. I am wondering if people on the left who oppose Kamala have anything to say. Story 58. This is not good. Escalation risks bogging us down in yet another Middle East conflict. Story 59. How else is he going to acquire this oceanfront property for his real estate company? Story 60. This sounds like a foreign affair in which the United States has no place. Story 61. History teaches us that inserting peacekeepers is the same as placing a target on a map. If you think they are going to keep the peace, you are beyond deluded. They do not want the United States there, and someone will kill them when given the opportunity. As for getting involved, no, we will not. Lebanon was the target last time, and the United States did not get involved there. There is no benefit. Story 62. Are they members of the Texas National Guard? I think some just came free. Story 63. My conspiratorial self thinks sending the United States military increases the chance of granting the United States and Israel mutual justification for a permanent takeover of Gaza City and surrounding areas to support expansion of settlements and the Gaza Riviera plan proposed by former President Donald Trump. Story 64. And they should not be going anywhere with this shutdown. Story 65. I think more eyes monitoring the peaceful withdrawal of Israeli soldiers certainly cannot hurt. Story 66. It sounds like they are just waiting for anything to be thrown at a soldier as a pretense for escalation, claiming a violent incident occurred. This is the same administration that tried to charge someone who threw a sandwich at a National Guard member with felony assault. Story 67. It's getting old being led around by the nose in the Middle East. More United States dollars are being thrown away. Story 68. If they are going to spend $2 billion a fucking day on the military, they might as well do something. Story 69. Other countries should be included as well, such as Germany, Italy, Poland, France, and others. This will show how severe it can become if the situation deteriorates. Story 70. We need peace, and with American troops it will keep Hamas in line. It was a fantastic idea. Story 71. The Israelis will kill them and blame it on the Palestinians. Either way, they will be attacked and used to further someone's agenda, and we, in our outrage, will go along with escalated violence. Story 72. Like every other thing he and his administrator do, I think it is a terrible decision. Story 73. It's necessary to keep both sides in line with the ceasefire agreement. Story 74. Realistically, this must occur for a third party to broker a long-term arrangement. Unfortunately, the ceasefire heavily favors Israel, so it will likely end poorly. Story 75. We already have United States troops in Israel, so what is the point of 200 more? Story 76. As someone who does not hate Trump no matter what, if that is the way we hold Israel accountable, then I am all for it. However, I want an early exit strategy which we do not have. I am not thrilled overall, but it is worth it if it ends the fighting. Ask me again in a month. If this is used to justify another 10,000 troops there, I will be very upset. Story 77. Oh look, another Middle East quagmire we are becoming involved in. Time is a flat circle. Story 78. If 200 United States troops are being deployed, I am wondering how many contractors will be deployed. Probably many more. Story 79. The Associated Press reported, citing two officials, that the United States would send about 200 troops alongside other allies and non-governmental organizations to support and monitor the peace deal in Gaza. These troops will help set up a civil-military coordination center to facilitate humanitarian aid and provide logistical and security assistance in the region. They will also monitor the ceasefire and the transition to a civilian government in Gaza. Most of the comments below seem not to have examined the report and have taken the original poster's post at face value before forming an opinion. Story 80. It seems like a setup to involve the United States more deeply, with the hope that more wars will break out. What happens when a United States soldier is shot? That seems suspicious, but I could be paranoid. Story 81. I would prefer that we stay out of other countries' affairs. We have our own problems to deal with, and one of them is in the Oval Office. Story 82. They will inevitably be attacked by one or more sides of the conflict, ensuring the ongoing wars in the Middle East continue for another few decades. Story 83. Sounds like a backroom handshake deal was made. You can expect to see United States troops attacked by Hamas, and you will have another American war. Of course, it will be a staged Israeli attack. Story 84. That was his answer to the military wife who begged him to temporarily open for them. A middle finger gesture. Story 85. No. Our money and now our people. Israel has universal health care. We cannot afford it. Story 86. About as upset as I am about him opening a Qatari Air Force base in Idaho. America first. Story 87. Hand-picked United States troops are going there to assess and hold beachfront property for Trump Tower in Gaza. Where is Jared Kushner now? He is setting up Trump construction projects in Gaza. Story 88. United States troops have already been stationed in Israel. I do not see this as a change. The Civil Coordination Center is new and different, but it is still inside Israel. Story 89. It definitely won't be biased at all. Joking aside, this is classic imperialism. Story 90. Peace agreement? You mean the one that was already broken by an aerial bombardment earlier today? Story 91. We are about to see more horrific violence. This is a ruse. Story 92. I'm fucking tired of United States politics spewing into everything in our lives. Get rid of this stupid dictator and let us all breathe. Story 93. The Israelis will not protect them. Story 94. It will be sad for one United States soldier to die for the orange fuck. Story 95. Americans cannot be trusted to be honest brokers. This will only end in grief. Looking back to when they committed genocide against Native Americans, they established outposts across the continent. The Zionist state is just an outpost in the Middle East. Story 96. Is this Trump's way to get a crack at turning Gaza into his next entertainment center? Story 97. I feel for the people being deployed there because it is a terrible thing to serve your country only to be sent somewhere with the explicit hope that you will die for political purposes. If you are sent on a suicidal human wave attack like some forces do, at least you can believe you are doing something for your country and dying with honor, even if it is pointless. One or more will be shot or blown up, and then Trump will have his war. That is all this is about. Story 98. Beirut all over again, but I'm used to Republicans ignoring history at this point. Story 99. It seems neither the original poster nor anyone in the top comments is aware that the troops are not going into Gaza or Palestine and are there only for logistical and command support, along with troops from several Arab nations. I hate Trump, but we have to get the facts right. This is not a case of United States troops actually enforcing the ceasefire. Story 100. I believe Donald Trump is unfit for any position of power, including the presidency of the United States. The government in this country is an authoritarian and chaotic spectacle. Story 101. Well, at least they will not be knocking heads in Portland. That is a plus. However, they will probably still release the Epstein files. Story 102. From the side that said Joe Biden was the sharpest person in the room. Story 103. When we were in a special military school, they called this an international incident, something to stay far away from because the optics alone could start a major conflict. Story 104. Powder keg. I do not need a 50-50 split or to call a friend. This is how wars start. Story 105. Americans will be targeted. This is better handled by the United Nations unless it marks the beginning of the United States boots on the ground, which will then always require more. Story 106. It looks like a false flag in the making. The same applies to National Guard personnel in Portland and Chicago. Story 107. I do not have any thoughts on it. United States presidents are always sending troops to monitor things around the world. Did you just start monitoring where troops are sent when Donald Trump was elected? Or has this been a burning question for years? Story 108. I would prefer United Nations-led forces so we could be confident they would act as neutral peacekeepers. It is better than nothing. Story 109. It is strange to do that after campaigning to bring the troops home. Story 110. I think he's trying to bait us into a war over there when these troops meet friction. Story 111. Trump did not receive the Nobel Peace Prize. There will be no peace agreement. Story 112. He apparently never read a history book. Maybe he should ask the British about how that worked for them. Go ahead and search for the Sergeant's Affair or the King David Hotel bombing. Story 113. There is no good reason for them to be there other than a Trump performance. It only invites terrorist action. Story 114. If they were there to keep the Israel Defense Forces in check, then yes. Great move, laughing out loud. But we know how this will go because we see it all the time. Story 115. I call it now. This is what Benjamin Netanyahu wants. He will leak some intelligence to Hamas so they can strike United States troops. That genocidal warmongering maniac tried to pull in the United States during the strike on Qatar. They want the strongest military in the world fighting for what they claim are rights to a land promised by their God in their holy book. Story 116. America first? He campaigned on staying out of Afghanistan and Iraq. He has nothing good to say about Serbia, Crimea, Vietnam, or North Korea. This is appeasement, but it is hard to tell which demographic. Story 117. Did the opposing team give Donald Trump more money or something? Seeing Laura Loomer have a meltdown on X and the recent news about a base being built leads me to believe this. Of course, I am just connecting dots. I could be way off. Story 118. Isn't he sending 1,000 people to American cities to protect immigration and customs enforcement buildings from those dressed in frog suits? It does not sound serious. He is probably doing it to claim he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. Story 119. There used to be United States troops in the Sinai as part of the United Nations force. Story 120. It makes sense. What does not make sense is cutting support to your own people, then handing $20 billion to Argentina after all the rhetoric about sending money that was largely spent in the United States and created a lot of jobs, and sending money to Ukraine to defend against one of the United States' most active enemies. Then having Qatar build a section on a frigging United States airbase. What the hell is even going on? Why has the whole damned country not turned on these traitors yet? Is everyone blind? The administration does not give two shits about a single American other than themselves. Their patriotism is more of a performance than true patriotism, and the Bible means nothing more to them than a way to manipulate the feeble-minded. Story 121. You mean the 200 real estate agents who are scouting his next big resort plans? Story 122. As he said before, he wants to develop the land for a resort and golf club. He is putting our soldiers in harm's way to take control of it. Story 123. The problem with deploying American troops in the Middle East is that you cannot predict anything. Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Yemen. It was two men in a truck who killed 240 Marines. People think Hamas has complete control in Gaza. They do not. I guarantee there are groups that will want to keep fighting no matter what the leadership says. That was the problem in Northern Ireland when the Irish Republican Army splintered. That is, the real Irish Republican Army versus the Provisional Irish Republican Army. Families, tribes, neighborhoods that will never quit. All it takes is a suicide vest or a truck. Jordan and Egypt cooperated because the United States gave them billions. We should offer the Palestinians $200,000 per person to move to Algeria. It would be a whole lot cheaper. Story 124. They are not monitoring the peace agreement. They are just securing the land his business associates acquired for themselves at low cost. You realize that wars are nothing but business. Story 125. Mr. No Wars. Amerika für Street. Crazy. Who would have thought? Story 126. What does 200 troops mean? Is that 200 soldiers? Donald Trump is arriving in Israel within a couple of days. Maybe that has something to do with it. He gave a strict deadline and said there would be hell to pay if one of the sides did not agree. I think this is a move to show enough force so that a war does not happen, while also showing he is backing his words. I do not know why he has the troops, but he is making a strong show of the United States being with Israel. Israeli representatives have said that the United States is the only Western country that matters to Israel. The United Nations has passed over 100 resolutions against Israel. The European Union plans to sanction Israel. Regardless of intense negative worldwide opinion, Israel is vital to United States interests in maintaining influence in the Middle East. I do not know the purpose of the troops, but I think Hamas and Israel both want to continue attacks. Israel does not consider the destruction of Hamas complete, and Hamas is emboldened and thinks it is undefeated despite many losses. So perhaps the troops are to deter both. Trump had threatened to walk away if there was not a deal, which is hard to believe given how important Israel is. I think he is showing he means business. The big issue on the table is the disarmament of Hamas and the demilitarization of Gaza. That is the major obstacle for Phase 2 of the plan. Story 127. If there is anything we have learned from more than 20 years of fighting and occupation in the Middle East, it is that where American soldiers are present there will be jihadists with improvised explosive devices and rocket-propelled grenades. Our soldiers will die there, and Donald Trump will use it as an excuse to send more. Story 128. Just another Bible prophecy headed to fruition. Trump is the Antichrist rapidly bringing us to the end times. He is not bringing peace. He is bringing the apocalypse. Story 129. Terrible place to be on leave. Perhaps weekends in Tel Aviv? Story 130. The idea is almost as good as building a temporary dock off the beach to unload aid. It is too bad that he is surrounded by sycophants who know nothing about the region. Beirut Barracks. Story 131. The population of the United States is over 300 million. I could not care less where the 0.00006% of our population who agreed to the risks of the job are relocated. Story 132. Wait a second. Has not Trump been urging the North Atlantic Treaty Organization to do more and to carry its weight? I guess he wants that golden statue of himself in Gaza very badly. Story 133. So what? The whole of the West is in their pocket anyway. Story 134. Ah, America. Regardless of the president, we love to insert ourselves into other countries' affairs. We are like a nosy Karen. Story 135. Keep troops on United States soil and protect its borders. Stop funding foreign countries with taxpayer money. It is 2025. Let them deal with their own problems. Story 136. But maybe a neighboring state could have its governor send its National Guard to pick up trash while peacekeeping. Oh wait, did they vote for him or say thank you? If they did not, we should not help them. Story 137. Trump is clearly hoping American soldiers will be killed, thereby opening his options. Story 138. The mission is intended to monitor a peace agreement and ensure both sides adhere to it. They are not entering Gaza. They are positioned nearby to support humanitarian aid and coordination. The objective is to stabilize the area and assist in releasing hostages. But the situation is complex and there is no guarantee of success. Story 139. I dislike Donald Trump. I believe he is an unchristian fascist thug, but credit where credit is due. If he can pull this off, he deserves recognition. Story 140. Now the question is he making sure Hamas complies with the agreement, or are we there to ensure Israel does not violate it? Story 141. It's nonsense. They will stage a terrorist attack on the troops, forcing them to defend themselves, prompting increased aid to Israel, and driving any remaining locals out so he can build his resorts. Story 142. I hope the peace holds, and whatever we can do to help make that happen is good. There will never be a time when bombing babies is acceptable, and what Hamas did can never be considered fair combat. Story 143. The microphone behind the scenes wants an excuse to go in while sitting at a safe distance. Story 144. I would gladly go if we could engage the terrorist Israel Defense Forces and protect the civilians they are murdering. Then send some to the West Bank, remove all the illegal settlements, and put the thieves on a plane back to Brooklyn. That would be. Story 145. What could possibly go wrong? Story 146. After the Cold War and the fall of the Soviet Union, world leaders promised to protect Ukraine if it denuclearized. Those same leaders encouraged Israel to withdraw unilaterally from Gaza with similar assurances. So 200 is a good start. Story 147. I think we will find out soon that, as is usual with Donald Trump, this whole matter is another scam. Story 148. In a vacuum, the idea of a peacekeeping force is not terrible. But I do not trust Trump. Story 149. 200 losers and suckers are about to get the Pat Tillman treatment so Bibi can lock our poor into performing Israel's genocide. America first. Story 150. Those are not troops. They are real estate developers surveying Gaza to decide where to place casinos and golf courses. Story 151. I have the same thoughts about the armed conflict in Vietnam. Story 152. He is literally dying to start a war with somebody, even in his own country. Story 153. I support a full United Nations peacekeeping force there for the next 10 to 15 years. This is the only way to achieve peace and end the cycle of violence. Anyone who fires a missile will be arrested by the United Nations and put on trial. The same applies to any attacks on Palestinians. Story 154. I don't have any thoughts about it. I'm too busy living my own life to worry about what's going on in that cesspool. Story 155. There are always ulterior motives behind spray tans. I truly doubt they are anything but self-serving. Story 156. Do I trust Israel to monitor itself? Is the United Nations going to handle it? Regardless of who the president is, I trust the United States more than any other country to have the military and political ability to monitor the situation and promote a peaceful resolution. It makes sense. Story 157. Peace for our time. You cannot trust a word he says. He does nothing unless it benefits his pocketbook or punishes someone he does not like. Whatever purpose the troops are actually meant to serve will become clear eventually, but I doubt it has anything to do with keeping the peace. Story 158. Disclaimer. I cannot verify the accuracy of this claim. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth announced that we are signing a letter of acceptance to build a Qatari Emiri Air Force facility at Mountain Home Air Force Base in Idaho. Story 159. Hamas is not going to stick to the rules if left to its own devices, as we saw on October 7th. Story 160. We should withdraw all resources and end all aid to Israel. That is how I feel. They are not our allies but have come to dominate not only the United States Congress, but also the presidency. Story 161. Why do we need them in the United States of America to protect our cities from immigration and customs enforcement? Story 162. He is a liar who serves Israel and Netanyahu, who has always had all the Epstein files. Story 163. United Nations troops would be better. The United States soldiers employed as contractors just ended up shooting Palestinians trying to get aid. Story 164. Recipe for disaster. Hamas has the most to gain. If it can kill some Americans and draw the United States into yet another never-ending war that it cannot win, it is exactly what Hamas and other terrorists want. Story 165. How is this America first? I thought Make America Great Again stood for not sending the United States military into foreign conflicts and for focusing instead on our borders and hemisphere. Story 166. There is no reason not to send United Nations troops as Hamas requested in 2023, unless you want a reason to become involved. Story 167. Why should they go to Israel and not Gaza? Peace needs to be kept by both sides. Story 168. All Make America Great Again supporters, United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents, and members of Trump's cabinet should be tried for war crimes. Story 169. On the surface, it is probably the most reasonable thing that has occurred since he came into office. That is not saying much. If I had a nickel for every time something reasonable happened, I would have 5 cents. Story 170. Send the Texas National Guard. They have no problem invading other states. Story 171. They're probably there to clear the way for his Gaza Largo. Bleak take, I know, but I don't believe anything good will come from this. Story 172. The people who were in charge of guarding the food drop sites were reportedly killing people for fun. Then they hired an anti-Muslim biker group to do it. I would say regular troops are preferable to those individuals. Story 173. Is it really a negotiation when there is a gun to their head and civilians are dying of starvation? Story 174. Blinken will get a statue there. Every minute of his life has been dedicated to getting America into a war with Iran. If Americans have to die for Israel, he believes that is how it goes. It's a father thing. He got his wish. In his confirmation hearing, Blinken recalled the story of his stepfather Pizar, who had been the only Holocaust survivor among the 900 children in his school in Poland. Story 175. My thoughts are, fuck Trump and anyone who bootlicks him. Story 176. I used to see widespread support for this in Ukraine. I guess it's different now for some reason. Story 177. Laughing out loud. A Redditor does not know what to think and relies on the site to tell him how to feel. Typical left-winger. Story 178. Netanyahu will shoot one of them himself to start the next war. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.